Welcome to SorWil Solutions, where we talk about what's going on in our community. I'm Joe Wilson, CEO of SorWil Technology Solutions. With me is our marketing director, Kathryn Hancock. And today our special guest is Mike Trapp, local author, community activist, and self-identified anarchist.
Yes.
Welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Mike, for the folks who don't know you yet, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and how you came to Leavenworth and then came back to Leavenworth and
So it's kind of a long story, but I see you have a lot of great questions and there's stuff that I'm trying to promote. So I'm going to try to get through everything relatively quickly. Long story short, my dad drove truck. So I went to 45 states before kindergarten.
Wow.
And when I did my dad's funeral and I summed up his life, one of the things that he taught me is that you can go places and do stuff, because most people are kind of bound by jobs and where they live and whatnot. But I've been deciding where I want to live. So after I got my master's degree, I became a full-time
master's degree in
sociology.
Okay.
So I'm a sociologist at heart. And if you read the book, you can tell my sociological imagination, my focus on systems, organizations, and change pervades all of the things I identify ways to change the world. And so I was a field organizer for a radical student environmental group called Student Environmental Action Coalition, did a lot of really neat stuff as a young activist. And my turf was Iowa, Kansas, Nebraska, and Missouri. So after I was a college activist and I went pro after I got out of school and for 2 years. And so that's where I kind of came up with a deep and abiding love for the region. I'm originally from Michigan, specifically Columbia, Missouri. And in 2006, I moved there because my dad my mom had died and my dad was going to retire. And I knew he'd need a place because he had a gambling addiction. His plan was to retire to Nevada for so I bought a house. I got it, moved to Columbia, arrived in Columbia with backpack, $240, a friend of mine who said I could sleep on her couch for a month. And this is why I love Columbia. 6 years later, I got elected to city council.
Oh, really?
And I worked in mostly in domestic violence and my real areas of expertise in social service. I've had a 35-year career in social services as well as being bookended by politics and activism. And so I moved to Columbia and was recruited to a substance use treatment center, had a long career there, ended up executive director at Phoenix Programs, which shaped my work on integrating mental health, substance use disorder treatment. While I was at Phoenix, no one was running for the city council seat in my hometown 10 days before the filing deadline. And they said, because our ward, which is mostly starter homes, so it's young people and old people, and they said our ward was apathetic. I'm not apathetic. I just been busy. My dad had, I successfully bought the house, cared for him through his end of life. And so he had passed that year and I was open. So I ran for city council, which ended up moving me to Leavenworth because after 9 years, I was what I called sent into exile. Since I was a social services guy, I created conflicts of interest by voting on money for all of the, Columbia has a social service program. So people could not hire me without jeopardizing their city funding. And so I found myself unemployable. And I started my own business while I was in Columbia, 4A Change, which is, I believe, the only for-profit homeless outreach business in the country. But my brother had worked with me in that, and I had mostly done consulting. And I'm a bad consultant because, good consultants keep their clients dependent on them forever, so they always have work. But if you teach your clients how to do everything, so I worked my way through my best contract and taught them to run independently. And I'm real proud of them. Welcome Home, a homeless veteran shelter in Columbia that really leveled up and is doing great. But I'd lost my big contract. I decided I just wanted a job. And so I came to Leavenworth to work for the Alliance Against Family Violence. I worked there. I worked there for 2 years. And that really got me to know the community and took a deep dive. And while I was there, was not the best fit for me long term, but I stabilized the organization, and I'm real proud that they're continuing to function and they're back in a growth pattern again. And so I'm real proud of the work that I did with them. But it was time to move on, and I wanted to write this book to kind of sum up what I'd been doing in life. So I took. I planned on moving away, but I fell in love on my way out of town.
Oh no!
With the
best laid plans of mice and men.
Yeah, so we dated for a little while, and I packed up my stuff and moved away. And then we talked while I was on the road, and we talked more. And I came back to visit, and romantic weekends turned into crashing a lot in Leavenworth. Turned into us buying a house together.
Oh, that's awesome!
In the fall.
Okay. So, congratulations.
Thank you. Didn't do a good job on knocking out that first question in a minute, but I'm going to try to do better.
That's okay. That's okay. So you say self-described anarchist. What does that mean?
Sure. So when you think of anarchists, if you know anything about it, there's a reputation or a picture that comes to your mind, and it's none of that. The best definition of anarchy to me means organization without authority.
Okay.
And it means that we self-identify. It's a lot like what I would say libertarians, where they have a distrust of government, but then I also bring that distrust to big business and corporations. So I'm also, in addition to an anarchist, because which has kept me in local politics. I was offered a chance to run for the Missouri State House of Representatives in a seat where the person that they picked, and when I wasn't willing to make accommodations to get that endorsement, the person they endorsed instead had an uncontested primary and general election. So I was basically handed a state representative seat, but that's not really my thing. I mean, I think, I'm really pragmatic as much as I am anything. What allowed me to be a really successful city council person as an anarchist is I didn't run on anarchist. I ran as a moderate, like my libertarian opponent and my conservative opponent. Sure. And then I governed as such. I took note that I won with the plurality of the votes, and most of the ward preferred a more conservative person. And so I governed accordingly, and I set my ideology aside. I became agnostic to the role of government. I just want to see that basic needs are met and there's an opportunity for human flourishing. And so a lot of anarchists, I think that mutual aid, that coming together in voluntary associations and meeting human needs at a human scale, doing things that are based on person and not role, I think all of those things are admirable and worth supporting. And so I'm an anarchist-based progressive, but you'll often find me supporting candidates who support more government, because as the rule of law and liberal democracy is the best platform to build an anarchist utopia from. They're not doing it in Somalia. They've descended into warlordism.
Sure.
And so constitutional order is a great way to not have warlordism and not have rule by one, but to have rule by law, which is then we find ways to meet those needs cheaper, better, and more effective. The Green Party once said we want to overgrow the government. And so I want to plant solutions, be it in the private sector, be it through charity, be it through anarchist mutual aid associations. And I want to see human needs met, and I want to see the opportunity for human flourishing. And we can worry about the details once those things are met.
That's incredible. You have gotten really well known for your activism towards Core Civic, the former prison detainee location in Leavenworth that has now been proposed as a ICE detention center. Can you talk a little bit about how you got involved with that?
Yeah, well, sometimes you choose your issues and sometimes your issues choose you. And so being in Leavenworth, one of the things I did as I was writing the book with some of my political allies who are more into electoral politics, they suggested that I start a PAC to support my organizing. And so we started the New American Community, whose premise is that local organizing and local government and local communities can have an impact on the national slide into authoritarianism, which is we ended up working. We formed before the election. We didn't know what was going to happen. So we if you were at my ribbon cutting, and you were, I talked about the idea of robust planning, that we planned ahead for every possible solution. And so having an organizing machine, which a PAC is, in your pocket to deal with whatever comes up. And what came up is Core Civic. And it's not so much been a PAC project as it's been a personal passion project, because it hits on local land use and zoning. The issue there, Marshall's detention facility were open for many years and then they closed down. They were grandfathered in. In 2012, there were zoning laws passed that require that they have to have a permit. And then Kansas law is really clear in the statute that if you don't use your property as that function for a year, that those grandfathered goes away, because there is a good of having a land use map that actually matches the use that people use in the property. And those mismatches are inherently hard for local government. And so as a local policy wonk, 9 years on Columbia City Council, I learned, I dug all that stuff and dug in deep, really helped me to understand. And where I've been helpful to the campaign is helping understand local land use laws, plus the understanding the community of Leavenworth. I'm a natural sociologist. When I arrived here, not knowing anybody, as a nonprofit executive director, I had to raise funds, I had to broker deals, I had to hire contractors, and I didn't know anybody. I worked with Jermaine Wilson, the mayor at the time. I was his mentor to his cousin, who was on the Columbia City Council. Unbeknownst to me, when I said, I'm moving to Leavenworth, he's like, oh, my cousin's the mayor. And I'm like, oh, introduce me. So that was my Leavenworth connection, that and the people I worked with. But I learned quickly. I'm probably the only one who moved to Leavenworth, and within 2 weeks, I had read the Leavenworth Comprehensive Plan, the Lansing Comprehensive Plan. I dug into all the foundational documents and dug deep into how things work because I'm a local politics geek, and
you looked at the county comprehensive plan as well.
I have, but it's not been, and it's timely, but I haven't dug as much into it because I've been caught up in other things. So
it's kind of interesting, and we can get to this a little later because I want to continue on this subject. CoreCivic's main point of contention is that they continued to pay taxes while they were shuttered, that people were on site, and that that is what their argument is for trying to be able to get around the SUP for that. Is that your understanding?
Yeah, that's their argument. The judge's argument when it went into state district court was he just asked the question to the city: Did you notify them that they rescinded? And they said, yeah, we did. We sent them that letter. And it was fairly late in the game, but they sent them a formal letter notifying them that land use had been rescinded. And then CoreCivic had a chance to pursue all institutional remedies, which probably would have been saying, are you sure? Would you like to reconsider? And they didn't. And then they had 30 days to take that to state district court, but they didn't. They just allowed that to go forward. And so they have not done, and they applied for the permit. One of the reasons that they didn't note it, because they had told them, they didn't give them formal notification of the permit rescission, because when they reached out about what do they need to do to reopen, they said, you'll need to apply for a permit. And they submitted that permit application and started that process down the road. But then they pulled back because I think they saw that they were going to face public opposition and scrutiny for the way that they've operated here for many, many years, which if you look at the 2017, there's a report from the federal government, the Inspector General's office. That's very damning because CoreCivic now their argument is, well, COVID was hard on everybody and everybody had staffing issues. And it was really, these issues were concentrated in an 18-month span. And that's just not the case. They had issues with understaffing, well documented, and documenting that they were fraudulently using triple bunking and then hiding the bunks from auditors. I think that goes back to something like 2004.
I was just about to ask you, what worries you most about CoreCivic? Because obviously it's not just the land use permit.
No, I think the private prison industry has a perverse incentive to undercut on staffing and maximize on patient care, because when they get a per capita fee for how much they're housing for people, and then whenever they don't spend and they keep back, that's what they're making as a profit. So it's an inherently bad way to form. This is a place where the private sector cannot compete. Because the other thing that's about private prisons and why CoreCivic is so much more problematic than our other prison providers is they don't have people with their own police powers. So they have to use our police, our courts, our ambulance. So their $1 million that they pay in taxes goes away very quickly in services that they burn through. And then they've been wildly negligent with the way that they've provided those services and interacted. They had was a death on site and they didn't report it for 6 days. So the argument that I like to make about their permit is if you had a McDonald's and someone died and you didn't report the death for 6 days and then you closed your McDonald's for 3.5 years, even if you were grandfathered in for your land use zoning, would you expect that you might have to apply for a permit and go through a process? It's ridiculous. Their whole argument is ridiculous at face value.
So if they were to apply and it gets past the Planning and Zoning Commission as approved and it goes to the council or the commission, do you think that the commission would vote for it or against it? And let me preface that with also, if they meet all the requirements and the golden factors, then does it become an ethical issue in allowing them to open, or is it merely the government's give rubber stamping it and saying that they should open?
Yeah. I'm not into prognostication to guess about how people would vote on it. But I think I know the commissioners well, all 4 of the 5, and one I've met a few times, but I consider that I know the others well. And I think they were all going to give a fair hearing, and they're going to go by the golden factors. The golden factor number 6 is, does the damage of CoreCivic economically, is that overwhelmed by the damage to the community health and safety? That is the one that largely the decision will rest upon. And there's some inherent value judgments, but you can also quantify those costs as far as police response time and impact on other services. But there's moral injury issues about dealing in a perverse system. As an ICE detention facility, it will be even more dangerous than when it was a Marshals detention facility because of language barriers, because all of the folks who are there are going to be sent to another country after as little as 51 days. So there won't be those chances to report abuse. And so I think that there's going to be a real chance of having so I think it would be a hard decision. They would definitely have to go by the golden factors, and most of them cut in CoreCivic's favor because it's been a long established. It looks like a prison. There is only one access road, so that's kind of a factor. There's some sanitary sewer issues that could cut against them in the factor number 4, but there's a case to be made for CoreCivic. I was surprised that they didn't go through the permitting process, because if they had, it might have been granted by now, and this might all be over.
There were a number of issues, like you've said, and my understanding is CoreCivic has agreed to, as part of the process, pay additional money towards the Leavenworth Police Department, pay additional monies in revenue to the city to offset those additional costs. Is that your understanding as well?
Yeah, there is an email that they sent that lays that out. So I don't know that there's been at what level there was any kind of negotiations to put that permit. Usually staff engage with those kind of negotiations, and sometimes stakeholders seek out to meet with individual commissioners, either, we're probably not planning commissioners, that's generally not done, but sometimes city commissioners will have side meetings to get informed of what's going on and have a chance to answer questions and get tours and ask questions. And that's part of the process, but I don't think that went very far. So there is some level where, I'm glad that offer has been made. If we were moving forward through the permit process, and I hope that they come into compliance with the law and do so, because that would create a process where those plans could be vetted, they could be fleshed out, they could be decided, because they're just fairly arbitrary. You can tell just by the numbers, $1 million a year, that's arbitrary. When someone says 1.12 million, then that might be based in something, but it's just a number. And they don't really know what those costs are. But these things are knowable. And through a negotiated process with city staff, a more deluxe kind of operating agreement that would talk about what exactions they're willing to make for the permit. And that's a common place and appropriate for negotiations. So I think, that would be the process is designed to facilitate this kind of thing where we could deal with that. And I think that would be a positive thing if that were done. I'd like to see this fight about whether or not they're going to do a permit just be ended, and getting into the process of how can we develop safeguards that can mitigate the inherent risks to the private prison, that honors the fact that they've had a poor operating record and holds them accountable. So this is not just like hypothetical. This is looking at both what happened here in Leavenworth and then also what happens at their other facilities. Nationally, they have a 140% turnover rate. We've been trumpeting the 300 jobs that they're going to create, but they're going to have to hire those 300 people. And then before the year is out, a year is up, they'll have to hire close to 450 to replace those 300.
Wow.
And that's every single year forever. So they're a machine of, they'll never be able to train for excellence. So if you're going to have an operator that this is their business model, this is the way they operate everywhere, then there ought to be safeguards and outside compliance and access by local and state officials that are going to ensure that it is. And we've not seen that. And that's broadly speaks to this large mass deportation agenda nationally, because we've not seen that with their main rival GeoGroup either, and some other notable cases like in Newark, New Jersey.
Your big concern then is not the overarching issue of this is a Trump initiative and we're just against anything that the president supports or issues or concerns, but more of a land use issue and them just kind of coming in and trying to bully their way in.
Yeah, definitely the case. We want to hold a private prison provider accountable for their behavior, and that's my primary issue. There are people who have lots of motivations who oppose that, and it's pretty much on the left. CoreCivic is universally opposed, and then on the right, it's pretty evenly divided. So there's about 75% of us who oppose it, because primarily for the reasons that we've just been talking about: the bullying, the lack of use, the poor way that they treat their employees and detainees.
Now, the issue with CoreCivic came up prior to this, and the possibility of them reopening as a as a facility before the president's initiative, and I believe Commissioner Cause had attended a meeting on that topic, and she got blasted during her campaign for commissioner for attending that meeting and the possibility that she would even support the opening of another private prison there. And yet now everything has flipped in the right, it seems, is well supporting it. We've seen Representative Proctor come out in the newspaper against the mayor for not doing more. We've seen the right really push the limits here of being opposed to the agenda. But it seems like not even a year ago they were completely opposed to it opening. So what do you attribute that to?
It's interesting. Some of it somewhat depends on your position. And full disclosure, when it came to me, I was on the executive board for the Chamber of Commerce.
Mhm.
And so I said quietly that this is something that we should need to explore because, having an empty facility that's designed for a specific use, that's the worst possible place for a land use. So
Sure.
it should be explored. And in a different environment, that might have been possibilities. Now, it did not set easy with me, and I was pleased that the county unanimously rejected that decision. I was pleased with that. But I think you have to look at some level. You have to look at what your level is. So I don't want to be too hard on Pat Proctor for flip flopping on this issue. Which he did because he rallied a lot of folks to oppose it because it was a Biden initiative, and then he's been the primary local proponent for it. And now that it's opening, and so. I'm in the same boat because I mildly thought it was worth exploring despite my serious personal misgivings about the private prison industry. But then my position changed and the world changed. And now it's very clear to me what the answer is, that we shouldn't do it.
Interesting. If it were to be approved and opened, would people still stand out there protesting it? And would you still be among those people?
Definitely, there will be people protesting it. There are people who feel very strongly about it.
Sure.
And this is going to be a lightning rod that's going to bring protesters, which brings up another land use issue. There's only that one access road. And so it's going to get garbled up and a lot of trips. It was not designed for that. But will I be out there? Quite possibly. I have principled concerns with the mass deportation agenda, the lack of due process. I have issues right now with ICE detainees being held in the federal prison system without constitutional guarantees. The ACLU sent a letter of concern with documented issues that's going on right now. And the thing that I'm most concerned with is people are winning their judicial hearings and they're not being released and they're not holding them. So with this reconciliation bill passing the House and the Senate, that's going to jump in a whole bunch of new money. But we need to pay attention to constitutional safeguards. And if any chance that someone that I know can be snatched up, U.S. citizen or not, if you don't have your ID on you, can you prove you're a citizen at any point, at any time, all the time? And then there's talk about denaturalization. And so I believe that the genuine concerns about the level of immigration is being used as an issue to strip all of us of our constitutional safeguards. And if this is an issue that I can use to highlight this issue, I probably will. But I also believe that there is some value to a negotiated settlement that has the most robust safeguards to protect human. This is the pragmatist in me.
Sure.
And so if I were in a position to be an honest broker and try to help to ensure that there were safeguards, then I might not and use other things to highlight my serious concerns about immigration policy and due process and the rule of law.
What's been the biggest surprise during this whole time with all of these issues?
I've done a lot of movement building, and I'm proud. One of the roles I call myself in the books, I'm a social movement entrepreneur that had to try to grow movements. And the movement, the Leavenworth especially, there's a regional movement against core civic, but when I got involved, there was not a lot of half the Leavenworth folks. There were just a couple of us, and we were all atomized. None of us were connected. And now we connect. We have a weekly meeting. The Leavenworth people who live in Leavenworth and Lansing are the primary drivers of the campaign strategy and the actions that are taking place to oppose it, that are some of the most prominent voices in opposition to it. And our movement is growing very rapidly. We've been able to break into demographic groups that have been hard to break into, but it cuts to a lot of people. A lot of people have some strong passion and are getting motivated about this. And it's a weird right-left coalition, which I love. I've had a long tradition of that, of focusing on one issue, no litmus test. Anyone who wants to oppose core civic for any reason is welcome. And we all set aside our other differences and we work together with a common strategy. So this has been so quick and so powerful and so local. And it's great because I just feel like I've made a whole new bunch of friends.
So you're saying there is a world where moderation works, where even though we don't agree on some subjects, we can still get together and work on a subject we're all passionate about.
Yeah, Ronald Reagan famously said that people who agree with us 80% of the time are not our enemies, but they are our allies almost all the time. And I took that to heart. And even as and what I found in local government, all of us are in that 80% because we all want to protect the environment. We all want a sense of place. We want opportunity. We want our young people to be able to stay and prosper here in Leavenworth. It's just a question of priorities. And we're actually all in large agreement. And there is a community consensus that we want to be safe, happy, healthy, and we want to have the opportunity for human flourishing. It's the details that matter. And so I try to remember that we're all on the same side eventually. And every time, when I was in a relationship when I first got into politics, and the first time I had enemies, and I said, and I got challenged on that word. And so I reframed it to people who are organizing against me right now. And so I will organize, I'm organizing against core civic right now. But if I had a chance and a role to bring people together and come up with a comprehensive plan that's going to protect people's safeguards, and there's an inevitability to that permitting process, then I would do that in a heartbeat. And I would roll up my sleeves, and the people that I've been pretty well doing, I think, a pretty effective job on my op-ed takedowns. I'm sure I'm not their favorite person in the world, but without a whiff of hypocrisy, I would turn 180 degrees and work with them on any kind of joint issue while also expressing my deep concerns for their industry every chance that I got. And that's just the way that I like to roll. And it's an experiment, and I've been wildly successful in it. And this is something that drew me to you because I saw you much in the same vein of that, not bound to party and being open to working. And
it's about the people, not the party.
Yeah, and I governed as a moderate. My second reelection campaign, it was not a lot of people came to my big campaign party. Threw a big one, but nobody came. And I'm like, well, this is the cause. This is what moderation. Everybody, I had wide respect, but there was nobody who was really in love with my politics because I voted for a lot of housing because I believed in affordable housing and there's supply and demand. And most of the progressive community are caught up in NIMBYism and neighborhood stuff to the detriment of the larger community. And most of my biggest enemies were on the left, especially amongst the political class who go to things like events. Mm-hmm. And then to the conservatives, even though I was the foremost champion of business climate in Columbia, Missouri, the anarchist, they just, I was just a little liberal for them. And so they respected me, would definitely hit me up when they needed stuff done or they needed insight, but they weren't in love with me. And nobody was.
So as you started this New American PAC, if people want to get involved with you, how can they do that?
There's a couple different ways. If you want to buy the book, if you want to check out my podcast, I only have one episode. I got too many interests. You can go to my website, miketrapp.store.
Okay.
And that's where you can get the book. You can find my podcast. You can get to links to the projects I'm working on. newamerican.community is our website. And if you're into activism and organizing, there's newamerican.community/learn. And we have 100 different articles about organizing and politics, of how to, so if you're campaigning or have issues, there's a lot of stuff in there. And then Core Civic Opposition Group, if you just Google that, we've got a Facebook group where you can find us and plug into that campaign. We've got a Facebook page. We've got a Facebook group. We're on Instagram. And we're building out into some other ways. If you want to reach people, you got to have 50 different channels. So this isn't another one. So we're trying to branch out into some of those lesser used channels and activate those folks. So those are all ways that people can plug in.
You said you had a podcast. Tell us a little bit about that.
I just did one episode, and I interviewed Bill Rogers. So we take a deep dive into what it was like to work at Core Civic and talk about that issue.
Oh, wow.
So I'm still looking to build it, but I have wide interests. The book covers 9 different ways to improve the world, from lifestyle to social services. And so I have interests. I have a consulting firm as well that does stuff more behind the scenes. So I'm working on a couple of different contracts, some in politics, some in social services. And so I hope to delve into all of those things. I kind of like your model. Might go a little bit more long form. We're kind of still exploring it. And if you ever get to meet Bill Rogers, he's a talker. You get him on the show, don't worry about having a lot of questions. Because there's a lot of Bill in that first one. But I hope to move into the more like what you're doing with this conversational style.
I appreciate that. We did, and this is something that we did reach out to Core Civic to give them an opportunity. One of the things that I really wanted to focus on with this podcast is making it as nonpartisan as possible and giving everybody an opportunity to talk about their views.
Yeah, I love that.
And letting the community decide what they wanted. The days of the news being nonpartisan, those are gone. And what's really interesting for those people with a little bit of interest in history, it was actually Ronald Reagan who eliminated the balance in the FCC requirement of the news being nonpartisan.
Yeah, and much to our detriment. I think that we were a wiser and more informed and less divided society. We've moved into this level of just propaganda, and we've moved away from the facts. But I think the truth still matters, and I think I believe that the truth will ultimately win out. And so I remain optimistic. I think this is we've taken a side track off the democratic experiment, and I'm hoping that we come to our senses and move back to a less dysfunctional, more organized, better way of doing things.
What's your vision of Leavenworth in 5 years?
I think Leavenworth in 5 years will look a lot like it does right now. We're in a place of a slowly decaying status quo, and without a lot of, if nothing changes, nothing changes. And so I'll be surprised.
Disheartening.
Yeah.
Very disheartening.
Well, what's going to change for Leavenworth is we've got this great building stock and people have preserved, and a moribund economy is a boon for historic preservation. And that's going to switch. Where Leavenworth is really going to take off. Ask me what Leavenworth's going to look like in 10 or 20 years. When we get a mass transit stop to Kansas City and you can jump on a train or a bus rapid transit and be down Kansas City from Leavenworth in 20 minutes, then we're going to boom. And as the suburbs slowly creep out here, so I see a renaissance in Leavenworth. It's just not going to happen in 5 years. We need to shake up some leadership. We need to get rid of the parking requirements and some of these outdated, unnecessary regulations that are hindering economic development and the flourishing. And we probably need an empty business tax.
So those are some of the things that I've actually been leaning towards as well. As I campaign for city commissioner, I look at the empty buildings. What can we do to lower the barrier of entry to get into these buildings or to start a business and bring more businesses here? Because there was a time period, in the late 80s when that downtown really did flourish. People were down there during the day. There was businesses open. Now it's, kind of really hit or miss. And there's so much potential, and it's so saddening. And I know that part of the issue is it costs so much to put sprinklers in upstairs. That's probably one major barrier. We have the parking requirement, like you said. I know there was a business trying to open that struggled with the parking requirement, even though they were near a parking lot. What can we do to make it easier for businesses to start and to bring more businesses here?
Yeah, I think looking at the experiences, the low-hanging fruit is parking requirements. We don't have a problem of people parking unnecessarily in front of people's houses. Maybe a little bit on Hughes Road out by St. Mary's, but that's idiosyncratic to the parking requirement. And so there's no legitimate reason for it. A lot of communities might need that, but we don't. And so that's what stopped us, because we were going to buy a studio. My fiance is a photographer, and we were going to buy a studio, but we didn't want to put in a parking lot. I've made a lot of compromises as a young environmentalist, but I hope to never build a parking lot.
And so your story is like a couple of others that I've heard. I find that very disappointing that is what limited you from opening up a studio downtown.
Yeah, I mean, we have one downtown who should just pay a rent, but it kept us from remodeling and turning an empty place that's still empty into another productive business. And it's a nice location where she's at across from Haymarket Square. That was going to rent, it's not going to sit vacant. So we had a chance to flip a vacant building into one. And then, and we didn't because of what I think is fairly arbitrary because her appointments are by appointment only. There's just not a lot of need for parking, and we didn't need one parking lot in that area. There's not a lot going on up there. So there's a disconnect. And so we need to look at every unnecessary regulation and get rid of it. And then also city staff, it wasn't city staff, it's the regs. It's city commission needs to take a look at this and get rid of this because staff was willing to work with us as best as they could within the law. They just administer the law. We need different laws on parking regs.
Very good. Very good. So now we're going to kind of flip over to rapid fire questions with Mike Trapp so that we can get to know Mike Trapp.
Yes.
A little bit more on a personal level.
Okay.
We've got 13 questions here.
Oh, beautiful.
And we're going to allow you to pick 4. We'll go one at a time. Just pick a number, and then we'll ask you that question.
Okay.
Go. So what's the first number?
3.
Okay, number 3. What is the best local small business you always love to go to that you want to give a plug to right now?
Oh, I got to hit Shay Coons Photography because, if you get a chance to fall in love with any business owner, skip that one. But no, she's really great. She has an eye for the light, has taught me a lot. Being a visual artist, really attracted to her. And so she does too many headshots and not enough interesting creative stuff. People should use her for the artistic genius she is.
Okay. All right. Next number.
Number 7.
Number 7. Ever had a ghost story moment in one of the old buildings in town?
I got a ghost tour and I heard some secondhand stories. So definitely, I like the idea of ghosts, but I don't know. Not had a ghost moment.
Never had a ghost moment.
No. I had coworkers who did at the Alliance building, which was in a historic building. And I did not encourage it because that can, people with trauma backgrounds, we don't want to scare people unnecessarily. It's a lot of times it's good fun. But when the one time I had a chance to explore it, it was not in my interest to do so. And I shut it down right away.
All right. Next question.
How about 2?
One Leavenworth spot everyone should visit at least once.
And you can't say the one you've already said.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh,
Maybe like a food spot or
I like to take people down Esplanade. It's just beautiful. We don't have a great because of that line of hills that's out there, but it's just gorgeous, especially in the morning. The Missouri River is an underappreciated gem. It's really the heart of Leavenworth, and people should really get out and enjoy that. And that 3, you can do a really nice loop by like walking through the church district past the old Jewish temple and come down 3 Mile Creek Trail and then walk back over by the community center and up around Esplanade and get a nice circle. So that's the underappreciated gem. Oh, I got to say the First City Museum. Too,
okay.
Because it's super cool and no one ever goes there. It's only open on Thursdays and Saturdays. It looks like it's not open, but it really is. And they have amazing, outstanding exhibits that really get into the history of Leavenworth.
I don't think I've been there either. What's your favorite exhibit?
They got a wagon collection that's pretty neat. They have prison stuff like the phone that you would call for riots and an old, like to take your mug shot, like in the really old camera days to like hold your face still. And they got, this is not for me, but the from the old mall, the bears are there.
The bears.
Yeah. So that was the best social engagement I had and have had in 2025 was my picture of the bears.
Okay. All right. Next one.
9.
9. Something you've done that would surprise people.
If they read the book, they won't find it, but probably jumping off a bridge. That was an early,
jumping off a bridge.
Yeah. Protest I did. There was this, Martin Luther King Jr. bridge in Toledo, Ohio. I met this guy. It was about a 30-foot drop into the Maumee River. And there was a guy I knew from a club and, he was going to jump on the anniversary of Stephen Biko's death. And, so we went and did that. And then when I got out of the water, my brother, who I was doing a lot of organizing with, is like, man, this would have been a lot better with a press release. And so we planned another one on the anniversary of the Fermi one near Meltdown. And so just because we decided, me and a handful of friends, we had a great view. We had made the front page in 3 colorful photos. The TV, we did not make TV because they were late and we had to go out on time because we weren't going to get arrested. But we jumped into the water and swam out to a boat and then got pulled up and sailed away. And we got our media message out in the paper, and it was a lot of fun. I recycled it again about 5 years later in the same town because people forget. But I'm in my 50s now, so I think my bridge jumping days
are over. All right. For the last question, we're going to let Kathryn choose that one.
Okay. Favorite harmless conspiracy theory about Leavenworth?
My favorite, well, I mean, I like that there's a vast underground network that was somehow connected with the Underground Railroad because people conflate the Underground Railroad with like an underground railroad. And so I think there's both, because it's got some truth to it and it highlights our important place in history. Kansas has a special place. It used to be that rural America was the heart of progressive America, and the first big progressive movement was rural folks. And I believe that we're going to see that second great progressive movement. And broadly, I know some people get activated by that word, but I just mean where people take care of each other, that brings back to those values where we all have a chance to be successful. And so I like that. In general, conspiracy theories, I was a big conspiracy theory buff when I was young. And then I've seen that that's brought us to social harm. And so I add it to like the world's not safe enough for conspiracy theories. And I add it to the world's not safe enough for sarcasm. And I used to be a real sarcastic person, but I've learned to try to communicate as clearly as I can because things can get so ugly so quickly now. Sorry to bring the serious note to your lighthearted follow-up question.
You're doing amazing things. Whether people agree with you or not, they can't deny the passion that you have for what you're doing.
Yeah, and let me say this to the people who support core civic, because I have some friends who are.
Yeah, go ahead and look at the camera as you do it.
I believe in the good faith of the opposition, that just because I have serious issues with this issue doesn't mean that I think that you're a bad person, that we disagree on this issue. And I hope that the 80% or more of things that we agree on, that we can continue to be neighbors and friends. I'm not trying to be against anybody. I'm just trying to make the world a better place.
As we close out our episode, is there any final things that you want to say? Anything you want to bring up? Anything that you want to touch on or highlight that you're doing that maybe we haven't talked about already?
No, I've just been. I have a new house, so I've been doing some stuff in the home. I've as much as I have a passion for what I think is a life and death struggle to save democracy and the rule of law, which animates me every day. I'm also equally animated by family life, by making sure that I take care of myself, that I mow my lawn with my push reel mower, and I pull my weeds by hand, and I spend some time just doing those things every day. So. We all want to do our part to make the world a better place and protect the things that are important to us, but we also have to take time for those things that may not seem important, but are actually the things that make up our life.
Mike, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for becoming a member of our community. Please, if you have a chance, check out Mike's book. You can get it online. I did try to get it online. I wasn't able to order it, but I'm in the process now that I know where to order it from. I'm going to be ordering my own copy as well.
Super.
So,
you can also hit me up for copies. You'll save postage. Okay. I always got them with me.
There we go. Thanks for joining us this week, and we look forward to our next episode.